When I slapped my husband's mistress, he shattered my leg. He locked me in the basement to reflect. I made a call to my dad, a ruthless gangster boss, and said, "Dad, don't let a single one of the family survive. Can you believe I nearly died the night I caught my husband cheating?" He didn't just break my heart, he snapped my leg, then threw me into a dark, freezing basement to reflect. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that I had a father. And that night, shaking in that cold, damp silence, I made one phone call and told him, "Dad, don't leave a single one of them alive." It was our third wedding anniversary, you know? I'd cut my New York Fashion Week trip short, desperate to surprise Ethan. I walked into our ridiculously opulent Greenwich mansion, the sharp click of my stilettos echoing like a death knell on the imported Italian marble. My heart immediately sank. There, right in the living room, were women's stockings and lingerie, strewn across the floor, leading like a breadcrumb trail straight up to our master bedroom on the second floor. A cold sweat broke out on my palms. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. But I was so stupid, so desperately clinging to hope. Maybe the housekeeper was just cleaning? That sliver of hope didn't last. It shattered the moment I heard familiar moans spilling from our bedroom. Then, Chloe's voice, sickly sweet, like venom wrapped in sugar. "Ethan, what if your wife comes back early?" And Ethan, my husband, he grunted, his breathing heavy with an excitement I'd never, ever heard from him before. "Don't worry," he slurred. "She's in New York. She won't be back until tomorrow." Then, the words that would haunt me, that would change everything, "And so what if she does?" That broke designer. I'm the one who pays for everything anyway. I stood outside that door, my entire body trembling. Chloe Vance, my best friend from college, was in my bed with my husband. 3 years. 3 years I'd poured my heart and soul into building our life, our family, reduced to him calling me a broke designer, a freeloader. The last thread of my sanity snapped. I kicked the door open. The horrific sight of 2 pale bodies, tangled together, burned into my eyes. Ethan scrambled off Chloe like a frightened cockroach. Chloe screamed, pulling the sheets over herself, but oh, that provocative smirk lingered on her face. "Sophia, listen to me," Ethan started, trying to make excuses. "This is all a misunderstanding." "Shut up." I swung my hand, unleashing every ounce of rage and betrayal I felt, right across her face. Chloe's head snapped to the side. Her perfectly sculpted nose? Now crooked. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. "Sophia, are you crazy?" Ethan roared, leaping from the bed. He punched me hard in the stomach. The pain buckled my knees, but I forced my head up, glaring at him through blurry tears. "Ethan, how could you do this to me?" "How could I?" he sneered. "You deserve this." He grabbed my hair, dragging me towards the grand staircase. "Who the hell do you think you are? Marrying into my family was the greatest honor of your life, you pathetic designer. How dare you hit Chloe? Her father is the CEO of Vance Industries." Even through the searing pain of my scalp being torn, a bitter laugh escaped my lips. "So that's it? You cheated because her family has more money than mine? Have you forgotten who stood by you when you started your company from scratch? Shut your mouth." He shoved me in a fit of rage. I lost my balance. Time seemed to slow as I tumbled down the stairs, one agonizing step after another. My right leg slammed into a decorative corner post. A horrifying crack echoed through the mansion, followed by an agony so intense that my vision went black. "Stop the drama and get up," Ethan sneered, walking down the stairs. He kicked my injured leg. I screamed, my back instantly drenched in a cold sweat. "Ethan, I think her leg is broken," Chloe said, wrapped in a bed sheet, her face pale as she stared at my twisted limb. "What a nuisance," Ethan muttered, grabbing my arms. He dragged me towards the basement door. "Let her cool off down there. Maybe she'll learn her place." I nearly passed out from the pain, but I bit my lip, determined not to give him the satisfaction of another sound. As I was thrown into the damp, dark basement, I heard Ethan tell the housekeeper, "Don't give her anything to eat. Let her reflect on what she did for the next 24 hours. The heavy steel door slammed shut, plunging me into complete darkness. I huddled in a corner. My right leg was already swollen beyond recognition, and the pain made me lose all sense of time. How long had it been? I felt for the phone in my pocket. Miraculously, it wasn't broken. At the very bottom of my contacts list, a number I hadn't touched in 20 years, saved under a single word, "Dad." I pressed the call button. After 3 rings, a low, authoritative voice answered. "Yeah, Dad. My voice was a raw, broken whisper. It's me, Sophia. Silence stretched for a few agonizing seconds on the other end. Then, I heard the sound of a chair crashing to the floor, followed by an urgent shout. Sophia, where are you? What happened? My husband broke my leg and he locked me in the basement. Each word was like swallowing glass. Dad, help me. Send me your address. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Before the line went dead, I heard him yelling to get the car ready. With trembling hands, I sent my location. And then, suddenly, I started to laugh. I laughed until tears streamed down my face. Ethan, that fool. He thought I was just some ordinary designer, a broke designer. He had no idea who my father was. My mother had told me on her deathbed, my father was Vincenzo Romano, the Don of the Syndicate, a crime family that held sway not just over New York, but across the country. My mother hadn't wanted me to be part of that life. So, she left him and raised me alone. I, too, had vowed to live without my family's influence, never even telling my father I'd gotten married. And what did all that noble pride get me? Locked in a basement with a broken leg. In less than 10 minutes, I heard frantic footsteps and the sounds of a struggle from upstairs. The basement door was kicked open in a single blow. A burly man in a black suit rushed into the blinding light. Miss Sophia, he said. I'm Marco. The Don sent me to get you. He knelt, examining my leg, and his face hardened. These bastards. As Marco gently lifted me into his arms, I saw two of Ethan's security guards lying unconscious at the top of the stairs. Upstairs, Ethan and Chloe were on their knees, held down by several other men in black suits, their faces masks of terror. Sophia, who are these people? What are you doing? Ethan screamed, struggling against his captors. Leaning weakly against Marco's shoulder, I gave him a blood-stained smile. Let me introduce you. This is my father's right-hand man. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. And as for who my father is? You'll find out soon enough, Ethan. As Marco carried me towards a limousine waiting outside, I heard Chloe's hysterical shriek. That's impossible. Sophia said her father died years ago. Inside the car, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair was waiting anxiously. When he saw my mangled state, a chilling, murderous glint appeared in his eyes. Sophia, Dad will break both of his legs. Leave no one from the Vance family standing. His voice was as cold as ice. Marco carried me out of the mansion. The early summer sun was so bright I had to squint. The excruciating pain from my right leg made me bite my lower lip until I tasted blood. Just hold on a little longer, Miss Sophia. Marco's voice was calm and steady. The faint scent of gunpowder mixed with his cologne was strangely reassuring. Behind us, Ethan's shouts faded. This is breaking and entering. I'm calling the police. Sophia, what kind of monsters have you brought here? I didn't even bother to look back. Marco's men would handle it. The limousine door opened, and for the first time in 20 years, I came face to face with my father, Vincenzo Romano. He looked much older than I remembered. His hair was grayer, but his hawk-like eyes were as sharp as ever. Those eyes were now fixed on my twisted leg. Sophia. His voice trembled slightly. He reached for my leg, then stopped his hand midair. Marco, get us to St. Jude's Medical Center. Tell Dr. Evans to prep an operating room. I was gently placed on the plush leather seat of the luxury sedan. My father propped my leg up with a cushion. He pressed a button, raising the soundproof partition between the front and back seats. Who did this? His question was short, his voice like Arctic ice. My husband, Ethan, I said with a bitter laugh. I caught him cheating with my friend, Chloe Vance. This is what happened. My father's eyes were like the sea before a hurricane, calm on the surface, but concealing a destructive force. He took out his phone and dialed a number. Get me everything on Ethan Hayes and Chloe Vance. Yes, the daughter of Richard Vance. Good. Don't touch them yet. Wait for my orders. Hanging up, he turned to me. Why didn't you call me sooner? After your mother left, I never stopped looking for you. Mom didn't want me involved with the syndicate, I said weakly. I went to design school, got a job at a famous firm. I thought I could live a normal life. A muscle twitched in my father's jaw. And you ended up with a beast who breaks your legs. I couldn't say anything. The city skyline blurred past the window, just like the last 3 foolish years of my marriage. At the VIP entrance of St. Jude's, a team of doctors was already waiting. Dr. Evans, one of the top orthopedic surgeons in the country, personally pushed my gurney into the elevator. My father held my hand the entire way to the operating room. His hand was rough, but warm. The surgery was a success. When I woke up, I was in a hospital suite that looked like a five-star hotel room. My right leg was in a cast, elevated by a sling. Outside the window, the glittering city lights stretched to the horizon. My father was sitting on the sofa by my bed, reading through a file. Under the lamplight, his profile looked exceptionally cold and hard. "Dad," I called out softly. He immediately put the file down and came to my side. "How are you feeling?" "Dr. Evans said the surgery went perfectly, but you'll be off your feet for at least 2 months." "Thank you." I hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Ethan and the others?" "Marco took care of it," he said, a ruthless glint in his eyes. "Your husband thought we were just some street thugs, screaming about pressing charges." I let out a laugh, then winced as the pain flared up. That fool, Ethan. He had no idea who he had crossed. The syndicate wasn't just a gang, it was a shadow power that moved pieces in politics and business across the country. Even high-ranking government officials trod carefully around my father. "Sophia, I want to hear what you think," my father said softly, sitting beside me. The syndicate's way, Ethan Hayes would be at the bottom of the Hudson River by now. I closed my eyes. I remembered the day I first met Ethan 3 years ago. He was a young entrepreneur, just starting out. He waited outside my office for a month, begging me to design the logo for his new company. He said my designs had soul. He said he'd never met a woman as special as me. "I'm going to make him feel a pain worse than death," I said. My voice was as cold as ice when I opened my eyes. The Hayes family may look like legitimate real estate developers, but they built their fortune on loan sharking and illegal demolitions. I'm going to make Ethan watch it all come crashing down right before his eyes, until there is nothing left. Just like he did to me. A satisfied smile touched my father's lips. He pulled a thick file from his suit jacket. Perfect timing. My people just found out the Hayes family is betting everything on a bid for the new East River development project. Their bid is full of inflated numbers. He flipped through the pages, pointing to one. "And what's more interesting is that your husband embezzled $3 million of company funds to launder at a casino in Atlantic City. He still hasn't filled that hole." I took the file. My heart started to race. This evidence alone was enough to send Ethan to prison. Enough to make Hayes' construction stock plummet. "Dad, I need time," I said, taking a deep breath. "I'm going to pretend to forgive him. I'll go back to that house and gather more evidence." "It's too dangerous," my father said, frowning. "Please," I insisted, taking his hand. "I need to destroy him with my own hands." After a long silence, my father finally nodded. "All right, but Marco will be by your side 24/7. He pressed the call button and Marco, who had been waiting outside, entered the room. "From this day on, my life belongs to Miss Sophia," Marco said, kneeling on one knee and presenting me with a specially made satellite phone. "Miss Sophia, my direct line and the Dawn's emergency numbers are saved in here. If you're in any danger, press this red button. We'll be there in under 3 minutes." I took the phone. Its heavy weight felt like the key to a new life. A few days later, a terrified-looking Ethan appeared at my hospital room door. His suit was wrinkled, dark circles hung under his eyes. He clearly hadn't slept in days. "Sophia." His voice trembled. He was holding a pathetic bouquet of carnations. "I had no idea your father was Don Vincenzo Romano." I composed my face into a look of weary forgiveness. "It's my fault, too, Ethan. I shouldn't have hit Chloe." Ethan rushed to my bedside as if I'd thrown him a lifeline. "Sophia, does this mean you forgive me?" I must have been out of my mind. It was all Chloe's fault. She seduced me. I swear it will never happen again. His clumsy acting made me want to throw up the soup I'd had for breakfast. But the play had to go on. "You've already gotten an earful from my father, haven't you? Let's just put this behind us," I said softly. "When I get out of here, we can start over." "Okay." Ethan nodded frantically, unable to hide his relief. He had no idea that as he held my hand with his phony sincerity, a hidden camera in the room was recording his every expression. On the day of my discharge, my father sent a motorcade of 10 black Mercedes to escort me back to the Hayes mansion. The spectacle was so over the top it made the local news. Ethan stood at the front door, his face pale as he watched Marco himself push my wheelchair inside. "If even a single scratch appears on Miss Sophia," Marco whispered in Ethan's ear, just loud enough for me to hear, "the Don said he wants to watch you get eaten alive by wild dogs." Ethan's legs trembled, and he looked like he was about to wet himself. Returning to the place I once called home felt disgusting. The bed in our bedroom was especially repulsive. Ethan had changed the sheets, but I could vividly picture him and Chloe writhing on it. "Sophia, you should rest." I have an urgent matter at the office, Ethan said, pouring me a glass of water before trying to make a quick exit. Okay, come home early, I said with a smile, watching him leave. The moment he was gone, I poured the water into a potted plant. Marco stood guard outside my door while I opened my laptop and got to work. As Ethan's wife, I knew the passwords to all his devices. I logged into his cloud account and quickly found what I was looking for: hotel booking records for the last 6 months, bank transfer histories, and even a few videos that were hard to watch. You animal, I muttered with a cold smile, saving the evidence. Just then, a new message popped up on his screen. It was from Chloe. Ethan, thank God she believed you. I'll wait for you at our usual spot. I miss you like crazy, baby. I stared at the screen, then laughed out loud. Ethan, you couldn't even wait 3 days. Perfect. This will make my revenge all the more satisfying. I picked up the satellite phone and called my father. Dad, I think it's time to start quietly buying up shares of Hayes Construction. Yes, so no one notices. After hanging up, I looked out the window at the bright sunlight. I once believed love was everything. I had willingly hidden my own light to become Ethan's shadow. But that naive Sophia was shattered, just like her broken leg. From now on, I would make it perfectly clear to everyone what happens when you cross the daughter of the Romano family. Miss Sophia, are you really going to do this? Marco asked, standing at the door of my walk-in closet with a frown. I adjusted an earring in front of the full-length mirror. The woman in the reflection wore a deep crimson dress, her red lips as vivid as blood. I had traded the cast on my right leg for an intricate metal brace, which peeked out from beneath the slit of my dress. Of course, I said, turning to face him. The Hayes family is throwing an anniversary party. As the lady of the house, I can't possibly miss it. Marco started to say something, then closed his mouth. In the 2 weeks since I had returned home, I had seemingly reconciled with Ethan. But behind the scenes, using my father's connections, I had already acquired 3% of Hayes Construction stock and was in contact with 2 minority shareholders willing to sell. My phone vibrated. It was a message from my father. Julian Croft has arrived in New York. He will attend the party tonight as a guest. He has what you need. The corner of my mouth lifted into a slight smile. Julian Croft, the son of my father's old friend, a financial prodigy from Wall Street. He was the man in charge of the syndicate's legitimate investments. With his help, my plan would take flight. Miss Sophia, the car is ready. Marco handed me a silver USB drive. The video you requested has been processed. I slipped the USB into my clutch. The cool touch of the metal glinted under the light, just like the cold resolve in my heart. The party, celebrating both the founding of Hayes Construction and our anniversary, was held at the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan. The moment I entered the ballroom on Ethan's arm, hundreds of eyes turned to us. They were filled with curiosity, surprise, and mostly the eager anticipation of a public spectacle. The scandal of a tycoon's wife exposing her husband's affair with her best friend had spread like wildfire through the city's elite. Sophia, you look stunning tonight, Ethan whispered in my ear. His hot breath on my neck made my stomach churn. I suppressed my disgust and gave him a radiant smile. It's an important night. I can't have you losing face, can I? Ethan breathed a sigh of relief. The gentle, understanding demeanor I had shown for the past 2 weeks, even convincing my father to forgive him, had clearly convinced him that I had forgotten everything. The foolish man. My father-in-law and mother-in-law approached, their faces plastered with awkward smiles. After learning my true identity, the social climbing couple's attitude had done a complete 180. My dear, how's your leg? My father-in-law, William Hayes, said, wringing his hands. Ethan can be so thoughtless. We're so grateful for your understanding. I responded with a smile and scanned the room. I soon spotted Chloe Vance by the champagne tower. She was wearing a white lace dress that made her look like a cheap wedding cake. She shot me a look full of resentment. I need to go say hello to an old friend, I said, releasing Ethan's arm and making my way towards Chloe, leaning on a cane. Chloe's face went pale, and she instinctively took a step back. Chloe, it's been a while. My voice was just loud enough for a few people nearby to hear. White suits you. You look just like the ghost you played in our college play. A few stifled laughs broke out around us. Chloe's face turned from white to a furious red. Sophia, don't be so smug. Ethan is only with you because he's afraid of your father. I silenced her by placing my index finger on her lips. Let's not spoil the mood on such an important night. I leaned in and whispered in her ear, for her alone to hear. There's going to be a fun little show later. Make sure you keep your composure. Before she could react, I turned away gracefully and came face to face with Julian Croft, who had just entered the ballroom. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit, his eyes sharp as a hawk's behind gold-rimmed glasses. "Miss Romano, I've heard a great deal about you," he said, lightly kissing the back of my hand. "The Don speaks very highly of his daughter." "Mr. Croft," I smiled. "I was hoping we could speak for a moment after the party. It would be my honor." We parted with an unspoken agreement. As the party got into full swing, William Hayes took the stage to boast about the glorious achievements of Hayes Construction, conveniently omitting any mention of a $3 million hole in their finances. I sat at the head table, playing the part of the perfect wife, maintaining a graceful smile and occasionally straightening my husband's tie. "Finally, I want to thank my daughter-in-law Sophia for her understanding and grace," William suddenly announced. "Everyone makes mistakes when they're young. What's important is that the family remains strong. Now, let's all raise a glass to this lovely couple." Everyone raised their glasses. I lowered my head to hide the contempt in my eyes, then looked up with a warm smile. Ethan, seemingly moved, took my hand. "Sophia, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." "You won't need a lifetime," I said softly. "You can start right now." Leaving him with a puzzled look, I took my cane and slowly walked up to the stage, taking the microphone from the MC. "Thank you all for attending our anniversary party, despite your busy schedules." My voice was clear and steady. "As the wife in this family, I've prepared a special gift." I gestured towards the lighting booth. The ballroom lights dimmed, and a massive screen slowly descended from the ceiling. Ethan's face tensed, a sense of dread dawning on him. "No, Sophia, please don't." He tried to rush the stage to stop me, but Marco appeared behind him, his hand clamping down on Ethan's shoulder like a vice, holding him in place. "Enjoy the show, darling," I said, pressing a button on the remote. The high-definition screen lit up with a crystal-clear video of Ethan and Chloe writhing on my marital bed, complete with graphic audio. A date stamp in the bottom right corner showed it was filmed while I was in the hospital with my broken leg. They couldn't even wait 3 days. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Chloe screamed and ran for the exit, but was blocked by security. My father-in-law's face turned ashen, and my mother-in-law fainted on the spot. "But that's just the beginning," I announced, switching the screen. Bank statements and casino surveillance footage appeared. My husband embezzled $3 million of company money to gamble in Atlantic City, which caused the East River Development Project to stall, leaving hundreds of displaced residents on the streets. Finally, I played an audio recording of Ethan on the phone with the head of a demolition crew. "I don't care if 1 or 2 of them die. The important thing is that the site is cleared by tomorrow." The ballroom fell dead silent. I walked step by step towards the ashen-faced Ethan. "For 3 years of our marriage, I secured 7 major projects for you. My designs won awards and raised Hayes Construction's stock price by 30%. My voice was quiet, but sharp as a razor. "And what you gave me in return was betrayal, violence, and humiliation." Ethan's legs gave out, and he collapsed to his knees. "Sophia, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. But I forgive you." I suddenly raised my voice, turning to the stunned guests, because I am just that loving of a wife. The room buzzed with confusion once more. My father-in-law, as if granted a pardon, scrambled onto the stage and snatched the microphone. "It's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. As you can see, my daughter-in-law has forgiven my son. Now, everyone, please enjoy the party." I descended from the stage gracefully, walking through a sea of complicated stairs toward the corner where Julian Croft was waiting. He handed me a glass of champagne, his eyes behind his glasses shining with admiration. "A magnificent debut, Miss Romano." "It's just the beginning," I said, taking a sip. "Did you bring the files?" Julian produced a folder from his briefcase. The complete shareholding structure of Hayes Construction, and their real financial statements from the last 3 years. They're much more interesting than what's been made public. I opened the folder. My pupils contracted. The company's actual debt was more than 3 times the reported amount, and a massive sum of money had vanished through a series of shell corporations. "This is more than enough for a short sale." "More than enough," Julian smiled. "I've already contacted 3 firms that specialize in short selling. They're just waiting for your signal." The party continued in a bizarre atmosphere. Ethan followed me around like a kicked dog, endlessly begging for my forgiveness. I maintained a dignified smile the entire time, looking for all the world like a gracious wife embracing her wayward husband. My dear William Hayes pulled me aside, wiping the sweat from his brow. The board of directors. Don't worry, father, I said, affectionately taking his arm. I've already told my father to halt his purchase of Hayes construction stock. We're family, after all. He let out a long sigh of relief. He had no idea that I already owned 5% of the company through an offshore corporation. With the 8% I was set to acquire from the 2 minority shareholders, I was already the 4th largest shareholder in Hayes Construction. After the party, Julian drove me back to the Greenwich mansion. Marco sat in the passenger seat, ever vigilant. Hayes Construction stock will plummet next week, Julian analyzed. The combination of the scandal you exposed tonight and the pressure from our short sellers will send it into a nosedive for at least 3 consecutive trading days. Good, I said, watching the city lights flash by. When it hits rock bottom, we'll buy up everything. When the car stopped in front of the mansion, Julian suddenly asked, "Did you really forgive him?" I smiled wryly and pointed to my right leg, still in its brace. "Mr. Croft, do you believe in loving your enemy?" "No," he said. "Funny," I said. "Neither do I." Inside the mansion, Ethan was on his knees in the living room, crying like a child. Looking down at him, I found the situation endlessly amusing. This was the man I once loved. This cowardly, despicable, spineless piece of trash. Sophia, I was wrong. I was so wrong, he sobbed, grabbing my leg and smearing tears and snot on my expensive dress. I stroked his hair gently as if patting a dog. "Ethan, let's start over." He looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "But," I continued, "I need to see that you're sincere. I hear Chloe's father is also bidding on that new North Shore development project." Ethan immediately understood. "I'll cut all ties with the Vance family tomorrow. I promise." "Good boy," I said, patting his cheek a couple of times. "Now go to bed. You have work tomorrow." After Ethan scurried upstairs, thanking me 1,000 times, I went into his study and locked the door. I called my father. "Dad, it's time to start the next phase." "Yes, I need the evidence on the Vance family's smuggling operation." After the call, I turned on my computer and rewatched the video from the party, pausing on the frame where Ethan was kneeling and begging for forgiveness. I casually hit the delete key. This is just the beginning. My dear husband, you're about to learn that losing everything is a far greater pain than any physical wound. 3 days after the party fiasco, I was sitting in the dining room, elegantly eating blueberry pancakes. My leg brace had been replaced with a much lighter model. Ethan came down the stairs, his tie askew and dark circles under his eyes. "Coffee?" I offered, pushing a steaming latte towards him. He eyed the cup with suspicion and refused. "No thanks. I have an urgent meeting." I shrugged and took a sip myself. Ethan's recent behavior was quite amusing. In public, he was subservient, but when we were alone, he wouldn't even touch food that I had handled. Marco's warning had clearly been effective. "Oh, by the way," I called out as he was about to leave. "There's a charity auction at the club in Soho tonight. I donated that Patek Philippe watch of yours. You don't mind, right?" Ethan's face stiffened. "But that watch was my grandfather's." "I know. It's a limited edition," I said with a sweet smile. "Which means it will sell for a much higher price. It's already been announced to the press. Young heir of Hayes Construction donates family heirloom to help the less fortunate. It's great PR." He clenched and unclenched his fists, then forced a smile that was more like a grimace. "Of course, I don't mind." As I watched him flee, I checked the security camera feed on my phone. The moment Ethan got into his car, he was frantically making a call. 10 to 1, he was complaining to Chloe. Though they had supposedly cut ties after the party, they were clearly still in contact. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Julian. "Short sellers are ready. Hayes Construction stock hit limit down at market open this morning." A satisfied smile spread across my face. The party video had been leaked online, and the hashtag Hayes scandal was trending nationwide. The board had requested a trading halt, but it was too late to stop the freefall. Marco appeared silently at the dining room door. "Miss Sophia, the car is ready. I have a checkup at the hospital first. Then we're going to that private investigator my father recommended." In the hospital corridor, I ran into an unexpected person, Chloe. She was wearing sunglasses and a mask, cautiously exiting the obstetrics and gynecology clinic. I quickly ducked around a corner and discreetly took a photo of her receipt as she paid. Positive pregnancy test. Zooming in on the photo, I couldn't help but laugh. It seemed Ethan's groveling at the party had borne fruit after all. A little devil was truly growing inside Chloe's belly. After my checkup, I had Marco drive to a rundown office building on the outskirts of the city. The elevator took us to the top floor. The doors opened to an office crammed with electronic equipment. A skinny man in a plaid shirt was staring intently at 6 monitors simultaneously. "Miss Sophia, they call me Kay," he said without turning around. "I've got everything the Don asked me to find right here." Kay played several surveillance videos. They showed Ethan and Chloe enjoying a rendezvous at a motel on the edge of town just yesterday afternoon. And here's something more interesting. Kay switched screens. Now it showed Chloe's father, Richard Vance, and Ethan's father, William Hayes, meeting secretly at an exclusive cigar lounge. They meet here regularly. On the 15th of every month, have been for at least 5 years. My eyes narrowed. "Can you record their conversation?" "That's difficult," Kay said, scratching his head. "That place has military-grade security. Use this." I took a fountain pen from my purse. A gift from my father. "Next time they meet, bribe a waiter to plant this on Richard Vance." Kay took the pen, his eyes lighting up. A state-of-the-art listening device. I didn't know the Don had access to these. Leaving the PI's office, I called my father. "Dad, Chloe's pregnant." "No, don't touch her yet. That baby might be useful." "Oh, and Richard Vance and William Hayes have been meeting regularly. Something's not right." There was a moment of silence on the other end. "Sophia, the relationship between the Vances and the Hayes might be more complicated than you think. It goes back 20 years. 20 years ago? What happened 20 years ago?" I pressed, but my father, for the first time, sounded hesitant. "I'll find out for sure and let you know. Tonight at the auction, be careful around that Chloe girl." I hung up, lost in thought. My father was definitely hiding something, and my gut told me it had to do with my mother. That evening, I changed into a dress from Chanel's latest collection and asked my makeup artist for a fragile beauty look, elegant but pitiful. Marco presented me with a jewelry box from the Dawn. Inside lay a diamond necklace with a rare black pearl at its center. I remembered seeing this necklace in a photograph of my mother. "Where's my father?" I touched the red diamond. It was cold as ice. "He is waiting for you in the study. Mr. Croft is also there." I threw on a robe and walked barefoot to the study. When I opened the door, my father and Julian were discussing something over a set of architectural blueprints. Julian was in a crisp suit, his eyes sharp behind his gold-rimmed glasses. He gave a slight nod as I entered. "Ms. Romano." "Sophia, come look at this," my father called me over. The blueprints were for the East River project, but instead of the luxury condos they had advertised, the actual plan showed a densely packed complex of small apartments. The floor area ratio far exceeded regulations, and the green space was cut in half. "So, William was deceiving the city," I said. Julian pointed to a seal in the corner of the blueprint. "This is the final version, and construction has already begun. If this gets out, the entire project will be issued a demolition order. Hayes Construction stands to lose at least $2 billion. My father handed me a USB drive. "Your birthday gift for tomorrow is ready." But there's something even more interesting. I plugged the USB into my computer. Bank statements filled the screen. From William's Swiss account, over $100,000 had been transferred to Chloe Vance every month, consistently for the past 3 years. The memo line always read discretion, but the most recent transfer was labeled medical bills. The date was the day after Chloe's miscarriage. "My father-in-law knew Chloe was pregnant," I said, frowning. Julian opened another file. "That's not all. According to Chloe's medical records, Ethan was on a business trip to Africa at the time of conception. The timeline doesn't match." My eyes widened. "Then the child was." What's more interesting, Julian adjusted his glasses, is that William Hayes knew all of this and still helped Chloe hide the truth. My father sneered. The relationship between William and Chloe might not be as simple as a father-in-law and his daughter's friend. The information made my stomach turn. The Hayes family was even filthier than I had imagined. "The press will all be at the party tomorrow," I said, closing my laptop. "It's time to give the Hayes family a gift they'll never forget." The next day, the Hayes mansion was lavishly decorated with a line of luxury cars pulling into the driveway. I entered the party on Ethan's arm, playing the part of a loving wife. Since his suspension, Ethan had become noticeably subdued, like a dog with its tail between its legs. He couldn't even look me in the eye. "My dear, you're here," William greeted me with a broad smile. His eyes lingered for a moment on the red diamond necklace at my throat, and his face subtly tensed. "It was my mother's," I said with a sweet smile. "I'm so glad you remember it, Father." William forced a composed expression and led us to the head table where high-ranking city officials and bank presidents were seated. I noticed Chloe was also there, sitting in a corner in a plain white dress. Her stomach was flat, her face pale. When she felt my gaze, she lowered her head and fiddled with her napkin. The party reached its peak, and the MC announced the toasts. William took the stage, boasting about Hayes Construction's achievements, never mentioning the recent scandals. Applause erupted as if the stock market crash and construction disaster had never happened. And finally, I thank my daughter-in-law Sophia for her understanding and grace. William raised his glass as another round of applause broke out. I gracefully stood up and walked toward the stage. Under the table, Ethan desperately tugged at my dress, but I easily sidestepped him. "You're too kind, father," I said, taking the microphone. "As the daughter-in-law of this family, I've prepared a special birthday present for you." I gave Julian a nod. He operated his laptop, and the large screen in the ballroom descended. William's face tightened, a sense of foreboding in his eyes. "First, let's take a look at the actual blueprints for the East River project." I pressed the remote, and a murmur went through the crowd. The real plans were a world away from the advertisements. Several city officials paled on the spot. "Mr. Hayes, what is the meaning of this?" shouted the director of city planning, leaping to his feet. "It's a misunderstanding. All a misunderstanding." William rushed the stage to grab the microphone, but I quickly moved on to the next slide. Next, we have the transaction history of Mr. William Hayes's Swiss bank account. For the past 3 years, you've transferred over $100,000 a month to Miss Chloe Vance. The ballroom fell dead silent as the clear bank records appeared on the screen. Chloe screamed and ran for the exit, but was stopped by security. And finally, my voice suddenly turned sharp. Miss Chloe Vance's pregnancy diagnosis. If you calculate the date of conception, my husband was on a business trip in Africa. That's a lie. Ethan shot up from his seat. I also have the DNA test results right here, I said calmly, displaying the final slide. Darling, the results say the child was my child. The ballroom exploded as if a bomb had gone off. Ethan, like an enraged lion, tried to rush the stage but was restrained by Marco. William, his face ashen, dropped his champagne glass. "But there's something even more interesting," I said, playing an audio file. In the recording, William was telling Chloe, "You have the baby. We'll make Ethan accept it as his own. The Hayes family needs this child to secure the Vance inheritance." Hearing this, Ethan turned and punched his father in the face. The situation devolved into complete chaos. The board members left. The bankers tore up their loan agreements, and the reporters snapped photos furiously. I descended from the stage gracefully, walking out of the ballroom through a sea of shocked and awestruck stares. Behind me, I could hear Ethan's roars and William's sobs. Chloe had collapsed on the floor, but no one paid her any mind. As I got into the waiting car, I let out a long breath. "Where to, Miss Sophia?" Marco asked. "To the hospital. I want to see something for myself." I looked at my phone. The post-miscarriage medical report for Chloe had just arrived. We were halfway there when Marco suddenly swerved the car. "We're being followed." A loud crash sent our car slamming into the guardrail. I was thrown forward, hitting my head on the back of the front seat. Stars exploded in my vision. Through the rear window, I saw a black, unmarked SUV hurtling towards us. "Get down!" Marco yelled, pushing my head down. The SUV crashed into us again, this time hitting the passenger door. In that instant, 2 motorcycles roared onto the scene. Their riders fired at the SUV's tires. The SUV lost control, flipped several times, and crashed into the guardrail. "They're from the dawn," Marco said, quickly reversing the car and speeding away from the scene. "Are you all right?" I touched the growing lump on my forehead and gave a cold smile. Ethan must be truly desperate. Back at the safe house, I called my father. "Dad, Ethan sent people after me." "No, I'm fine. I handled it." After the call, I checked the security footage from the Hayes mansion. As expected, Ethan and Chloe were having a violent argument. "This is all your fault. Now that bitch knows everything. We're finished." Ethan screamed. Chloe sneered back. "Your father didn't seem to think so when he was sleeping with me. All you Hayes men are the same." "Shut up." Ethan lunged and began to choke her. "I could kill you." Chloe struggled, then grabbed a fruit knife from the table and slashed Ethan across the face. He screamed and let go, and she used the chance to flee the room. I turned off the feed, lost in thought. This dogfight was more entertaining than I'd anticipated. Just then, Julian called. "Sophia, the emergency board meeting is over. Ethan has been officially fired, and William Hayes was admitted to the hospital with a heart attack." And the stock hit limit down again, Julian said with a light laugh. We now hold 18% of the shares. With the support of a few minority shareholders, it's enough to initiate a hostile takeover. It's not enough, I said, walking to the window. The night was pitch black. I need to see Hayes Construction completely destroyed. I hung up and opened my safe, taking out a long sealed document, a copy of my mother's diary. Inside, she had detailed the entire process of discovering the crimes of the Hayes and Vance families. The final entry was dated the day before her fatal fall. Mom, it's almost over, I whispered. None of them will get away. The next morning, Marco banged on my door. Miss Sophia, there's a problem. Ethan and Chloe have disappeared. The mansion is in chaos. He shot out of bed when around 3 a.m. the security guard was knocked out and the CCTV footage was wiped. Marco handed me a tablet. But a street camera caught them being forced into a silver van. In the grainy footage, Ethan and Chloe were being dragged into the vehicle by men in black. It didn't look voluntary. Those aren't our men. I frowned. Run the plates. They're fake. Marco shook his head. But the van was heading towards the docks. I immediately called my father. But a stranger's voice answered. Miss Romano, if you want to see your father and your husband again, come to the warehouse at Pier 3 alone. Otherwise, Ethan's desperate screams echoed through the phone. The abandoned warehouse at Pier 3. The salty sea breeze carried a fishy stench. I stood in the darkness, my hand on the small pistol hidden in my sleeve. The cool metal was a small comfort. Marco and 6 of my men were positioned around the perimeter, ready to move in. Recon complete, Miss Sophia. Marco's voice came through my earpiece. 2 guards at the front door, 2 at the back. Total of 4 outside. Don't recognize their faces. Not local. Father. Thermal imaging shows 4 heat signatures inside. 2 standing. 2 seated. One of the seated figures matches the Don's build. I took a deep breath. Proceed as planned. 5 minutes later, I heard a series of dull thuds from the back of the warehouse, followed by the sound of bodies hitting the ground. I took that as my cue, approached the front door, and deliberately stepped on a piece of broken glass. Who's there? A tense voice called from inside. It's Sophia Romano. You told me to come alone. The steel door creaked open, and the muzzle of a gun was pressed to my forehead. The man holding it was a brute with a nasty scar under his left eye. Pat her down, he ordered. I calmly raised my hands and allowed another man to search me. They took my phone and wallet, but missed the blade in my boot and the pistol up my sleeve. Get in. The scarred man shoved me inside. The warehouse was dark and damp, lit by a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. A man in a black trench coat sat with his back to me. On either side of him stood armed guards. On the floor, Ethan and Chloe were huddled together, hands tied and mouths gagged, their faces bruised and bloody. My father was nowhere to be seen. Miss Romano, I've heard a lot about you, the man in the trench coat said, slowly turning around. I didn't recognize him. He was in his early 40s, with a hooked nose and a long scar that ran from his cheek down to his neck. Where's my father? I asked bluntly. The man grinned, revealing yellow teeth. Don Romano is perfectly safe. Relax. I brought you here to make a deal. What kind of deal? The territories left behind by the Hayes and Vance families, he said, expertly flipping a butterfly knife between his fingers. You did a very thorough job cleaning house, Miss Romano. Our boss was very impressed. And who is your boss? That's not important. He stood and walked over to Ethan, lightly tracing his cheek with the tip of the knife. What's important is that we can work together. You get your revenge. We take over their businesses. What do you say? Ethan's eyes were wide with terror, and he shook his head, making muffled noises. Chloe had already passed out. I sneered. You kidnapped my husband just to propose a partnership? We couldn't get a meeting with someone of your stature any other way. The man shrugged. Besides, consider this us doing you a favor after this idiot tried to run you off the road. I slowly walked towards the center of the warehouse, the click of my heels echoing on the concrete. Let me guess, you're with the Falcone family. I hear you've been losing a lot of business to my father lately. The man's face tightened, and his knife flipping faltered. You're well informed, Miss Romano. That's not all. I stopped about 10 feet from him. I also know about the shipment you're bringing into this pier tonight. I believe an anonymous tip has already been made to customs. You bitch. The man lunged at me with the knife. At that exact moment, the warehouse ceiling exploded, and dozens of smoke grenades rained down. Acrid smoke filled the space instantly. Gunshots, shouts, and footsteps created a symphony of chaos. Get down, Miss Sophia. Marco's voice yelled through my earpiece. I dropped to the floor, pulling the pistol from my sleeve. Through the smoke, I saw the scarred man stumble past me. I shot him in the knee. He screamed and collapsed. 5 minutes later, when the smoke cleared, a dozen heavily armed men in tactical gear had secured the area. The man in the trench coat and his crew were on the ground. And Ethan and Chloe were lying in a corner like dead dogs. The Don will be here shortly, Marco said, brushing the dust off my clothes. Are you all right? I'm fine. I walked over to Ethan and ripped the gag from his mouth. Darling, your new friends don't seem very reliable. Sophia, please save me. They were going to kill me. Ethan begged, tears and snot running down his face. What a shame they failed. I stood and turned to Marco. Take these men to the police station. The charges are kidnapping and attempted murder. Attempted murder? Marco looked puzzled. I pointed to a security camera in the corner of the warehouse. I have them on tape confessing to everything, including admitting they planned my car accident yesterday. Hearing this, Ethan suddenly screamed, Sophia, you're a devil. This was all your setup. Marco kicked him silent. I shook my head and called my father. Dad, it's handled. The Falcons tried to make a move. Yes, customs has been notified. I'll wait for you. I hung up and walked outside. The morning sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon, painting the harbor in shades of gold. In the distance, the wail of police sirens grew closer, while from the other direction, a convoy of my father's cars sped towards me. 4 days later, a seismic shock hit the New York financial world. The Romano Group officially announced its acquisition of Hayes Construction. As the heir to the group, I held a press conference and exposed the decades of corruption within the company. That same day, the police raided the headquarters of Vance Industries and Richard Vance was arrested on multiple charges, including smuggling and bribery. The image of me standing in front of the Hayes Construction building and fielding questions from the press was on every news channel. I wore a Chanel suit, my mother's red diamond necklace, and an air of unshakable confidence, a stark contrast to the tragic victim who had been locked in a basement with a broken leg just 6 months prior. Miss Romano, as the new CEO, will you be retaining the existing management? A reporter asked. I smiled. Of course not. Hayes Construction requires a complete overhaul, from its executives down to its corporate culture. There are rumors that your husband, Ethan Hayes, is being investigated for embezzlement and murder for hire. What are your thoughts on that? I trust the law will deliver a just verdict, I said with a solemn expression. Personally, I feel a deep sense of regret and sorrow over Mr. Hayes' actions. After the press conference, Julian was waiting for me in the boardroom. Sophia, here are the final acquisition papers. All they need is your signature. I glanced through the documents, then looked up at him. Julian, why are you helping me? Is it just because of my father?